Think you know everything about property investment in 2025? Well, think again. What if I told you that the one common fact that you've probably heard could actually be costing you thousands of pounds or maybe even losing you the great deals? Stick around because I'm going to share the top myths still tripping people up this year, and more importantly, what actually matters if you're serious about investing in property. So when I've been chatting with new investors, whether it's in the comments, emails, or even some of my consulting calls, I see the same worries coming up again and again. And honestly, a lot of it comes from outdated advice that just doesn't fit the market that we're in right now. So let's cut through some of that noise. The first myth that I want to talk about is a big one, the fact that you need a huge down payment to even start in property investing. I thought the same with my first place that I bought, and it nearly put me off. When you look at a typical buy-to-let mortgage, 25% deposit is usually the rule of thumb, but there are other ways in. First-time buyers, for example, can get on the ladder with as little as a 5% deposit, and if you're prepared to live in the property for a while, that can be a brilliant stepping stone to investing later by doing something like a live-in refurb or a live-in flip. Mortgage lenders are also known to see this positively when considering you for a landlord mortgage later, because they'll treat it as experience. But there are also things like fractional ownership, investment trusts, or even partnering with someone else and splitting the capital. The point is that you don't need to sit on the sidelines for years waiting to save £100,000 to get started. Smaller, calculated steps can absolutely get you going. I've actually done a video on how new investors can get going with as little as £10,000 that I'll link up here. Right, so this second myth is the one that catches people out, which is the idea that property always goes up in value. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this, especially from people who have only ever seen the last decade of rising prices. But if the last just couple of years have taught us anything, is that property markets move both ways. Over the long term, bricks and mortar have typically been safer than most assets, but it's not guaranteed. Things like interest rates, job growth in the area, and even whether there's new infrastructure going on nearby can all shift values. So instead of just assuming it'll all be fine, focus on the fundamentals. Cash flow, demand, and having a solid exit strategy. That's what actually protects you. And my third myth, that location is everything and only city centres matter. You've probably heard, buy the worst house on the best street, or always stick to the prime locations like Liverpool or Manchester right now. But in 2025, that just isn't the full picture. Remote and hybrid work has changed things. People are moving further out of cities, secondary cities are growing, and small commuter towns with good transport links can sometimes outperform the central flats. As of right now, August 2025, London is actually going down in value because of that very reason. So a few of my actual investment properties are in Newark, and this is exactly why. It has a super fast train to London, and it gets you there in about 75 minutes, despite being halfway across England. So what matters more is the growth potential of a location. Is money being invested in the area? Are people moving to the area? And are the demographics shifting in your favour? That's where the real opportunity lies. But let's move on to the fourth myth, and this one's a classic one. Property management is a full-time headache. People imagine spending every weekend unblocking toilets or dealing with late night calls. The reality is, it doesn't have to be like that. Between professional property managers, prop tech apps, and landlord insurance, you can structure things so you're barely involved in the day-to-day. But you still do need to keep an eye on that big picture and keep some money in reserve for the maintenance. But this general idea of being tied to the property 24/7 just isn't true, at least anymore. And while we're on the subject of property management, let's tackle my fifth and final myth, that evictions are frequent and bound to happen to you. This one gets blown out of proportion in the headlines and in the forums, but the truth is most landlords never even face an eviction. I think the last time I looked at the stat, it was under 1%. Even if you do face that eviction, there are ways to protect yourself from it, from rent guarantee insurance, proper tenancy agreements, and careful screening. Will it take time if an eviction does happen? Yes. But is it the nightmare scenario that some people imagine? Not usually. So there you have it, 5 big myths busted. The takeaway here is that property investment isn't about following the cliches from 20 years ago. It's about looking at today's data, using the tools and strategies available now, and making smart and informed decisions. So if you found this video useful, make sure you hit the subscribe button, because I've got plenty more videos coming to help beginner property investors get started. And if you want to see how I'd actually invest with a realistic budget, check my video over here on how I'd start with 50k. Good luck, and I'll catch you in the next one.